Hey everybody, welcome back to the Paranormal Rush Hour. I'm your host, Ryan Rush, and tonight I want to talk to you guys about a topic that I've been wanting to discuss a little more in depth on the show. And I figured this was a good time to do it because I've gotten kind of intrigued here lately because of some things that I've found. And what I'm talking about is the little people. Okay. The little people are one of those things that, I mean, this just shows up in every single culture in the entire world, pretty much. I mean, almost every single culture has some kind of lore or legend or story about the little people. And to me, it is very intriguing because there has to be something to it. If all of these cultures have the same kind of story and these stories span, back a long time, it's it's just interesting that they would all be able to tell the same thing or similar, very similar things. But anyway, um the things that I have found recently that are making me wonder a whole lot about this. And if any of you have seen my latest Frosted Forest Sasquatch video, you know what I'm talking about. It's these little shelters, like almost like little huts that were built. And you can tell they were constructed, on purpose. I mean, it's not some kind of just nature doing weird stuff kind of thing. And you can tell they were made on purpose. And like for instance, there's like sticks that are made to support, um I don't want to say like a blind, but anyway, they've piled like straw up on the back parts of this and like on the top, making kind of like a roof. And whatever has made this also has straw underneath it, and you can tell something has obviously been down there. um I don't know, laying there, something, who knows, but they have been there. It's something has been in there, and you can see by the way the straw is packed down and just so condensed and compressed that you can tell something has been utilizing it. And it looks way too small to be even like an infant Sasquatch or something. I just don't see one of them fitting under this. That's what's really gotten me wondering about this stuff. And it's not like the first one I've found. I've found several things very similar to that. And I mean, almost exactly built exactly like that. But I've found those, and I have also found other things like small tunnels kind of going through really dense foliage and stuff, and they're very small, like that big. And like, it's just, they're well formed. Like, it's really, really weird. Okay, finding stuff like that. You wonder what in the world is making this stuff or using something that small. And I think that might be what has gotten a lot of these people intrigued about this recently, because it seems like a lot of the people that I see talking about this now are also Sasquatch researchers. And this is not something that people were really talking about, 4 or 5 years ago. This has really come around in the last like 2 years or so, really gained steam in the last year. But it's strange to me because it used to never be mentioned really. And now I'm seeing more and more people start talking about the possibilities of them existing. Now, there are so many stories from all these native tribes, and really, I mean, any indigenous culture, no matter where they are, has some sort of story about them. And the characteristics, the behaviors, things like that all seem to coincide. Like, they're all similar. So it really makes you wonder about it. And just the fact that that being the case lends some sort of credibility to it, I think. Now I don't know anything for sure until I see it, but I don't know. I'm really intrigued by it. So, and I know I'm not the only one these days. So, anyway, I received an email, okay, from one of you guys, and it's of an encounter. And this is literally the only encounter I've ever like read about from someone, you know what I mean, like that someone actually told me. It's the only one that I've ever had sent to me for sure about the little people. Uh, it's weird because, you don't hear about encounters much. You don't really hear about sightings or things like that. It's a lot of legend and stuff, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about this. And I was really stoked that somebody actually sent in an email about their encounter with the little people. And I was going to wait a little bit to share it with you guys, but I think I'm going to go ahead and read it to you because I thought it was really cool. And I want you guys to hear it because it kind of goes along with some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And I thought that was neat too. But anyway, I'll get to it. And of course, you guys know I share everything anonymously unless you guys specify to tell people to tell your name. I keep you guys anonymous. I'm not gonna say anybody's name that doesn't tell me to. So anyway, the email starts. Hi Ryan. I'm a big fan of your show and I've been hesitant to write this and share it with you, but I know how open-minded you are, and I just hope the rest of the audience is too. I don't share this with anyone openly, but since you have recently been talking about the little people, I felt like I needed to finally tell you about my experience. You are welcome to share it on your show since you keep everyone anonymous anyway. I just want everyone to know that I still think it is as insane as anyone else will. I was in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park doing a small section hiking the Appalachian Trail for a few days, and I needed some dry firewood since it had been raining all week. I had stashed some wood and lighter fluid a few months before in a place off the trail where nobody would go looking. It was under a rocky overhang that you had to scale a few rocks to get to. It was hidden behind a large boulder. I thought that was interesting. Hidden behind a large boulder that you would have to climb over to get to the overhang. I did this to retrieve my stash, and as soon as I got over the boulder, I heard what sounded like drums. I had no idea where this was coming from, and then I saw a haze. It looked just like fog about 12 steps away from me. I walked to it, and there they were, little people. The fog stopped, like cut off, like a straight line going down through it, and nothing on the other side. Right as I stepped past the line is when I saw them. It was like a different place. They were dancing like a typical looking native rain dance type of motion, and drums are playing. I stood there for about a minute and looked at them. They were dressed like traditional Native Americans and looked like them, just very small, like a foot to a foot and a half tall. After that minute or so, they saw me, and I was terrified. And that is all I remember. The next thing I knew, I was sitting at the campsite I had been eyeing before all of this. Beside me was my dry wood and lighter fluid. I can't explain how I or it got there. I have no recollection of it at all. That is my experience with them. The little people are very real and should always be respected. Like I said before, I'm a huge fan of your show, and you are more than welcome to share my encounter. Keep up the awesome work, and I will withhold your name. So, that's what I had sent to me. Take it as you will. But bear in mind that someone took the time to write that. So, there may be something to it. And I thought it was very interesting because I had never even heard an account of it. You know, I'd never heard an encounter told by anyone. And I would really like to hear some more encounters with little people. If anybody has had one, please send it to me. Send it to paranormalrushhour@gmail.com. That's the email address for the show, and I will get it if you send it to that. Also, send me anything else you would like me to share on the show. I'll be glad to. And I do always keep everyone anonymous unless you specify otherwise. So, that being said, almost every culture has documented the existence of the little people. Most cultures have their own versions of them, but they seem relatively the same. Airplane. Anyway, the little mummy is something that I think, well, if we had it still, it would lend every bit of credibility we need to this theory, I think. But this was discovered in the 1930s, okay? They call it the little mummy, and it was found in the San Pedro Mountains. They found it, discovered it in a cave, okay? And it's said to have had very tan skin and stood about a foot tall. Now, as it was mummified, it is in a sitting position, and they say the sitting position is about 7 inches in height, the sitting mummy. Now, so I guess about a foot if it's standing on legs. But the thing is, no one has been able to look at this thing or test it or anything since like the 1950s because it went missing somehow. Now, how or who took it or what happened to it, nobody knows. And it would probably be really cool if we did, because I think, like I said, I think that really would lend some credibility to all of this and answer a lot of questions and give us something definitive, which is something I'd love to see on this subject, particularly. But that being said, there's a lot of speculation about this. Now, the experts that examined it, some of the experts said that it was an encephalactic fetus. I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, that's what they say it is. They said it was, these particular experts. However, it was argued by other experts that it wasn't, because it had a full set of adult teeth. So, if you ask me, if something has a full set of adult teeth, then that rules out the possibility of it being a fetus of any type. So, no, I mean, it could have a full set of baby teeth, and that'd be one thing, but it had permanent teeth. So, but then again, we don't have this thing to look at anymore. And it would be really nice if someone would come forward with it and give it to the right people to check out. But I doubt that's going to happen We don't know if it was destroyed or if it's just being stored somewhere with the UFO from the Roswell crash. So who knows, man? Who knows? But anyway, I would really love to see this thing resurface because I think that it holds the key to a lot of questions. And it would really be cool to be able to study it with the technology and experience that we have now. So I think that would really be able to lend some credibility to this, to the whole subject. But I mean, if you think about it, okay, they have found uh, giants. They found the skeletons of giants. Okay, I mean, bones and stuff of massive beings like people. And since that, and I mean, that's even said to have existed in the Bible. You know, even the Bible says that giants existed. You've got the story about the giants, which is a recent encounter that the giants of Kandahar. And if you don't know about that, check it out because it's really interesting. And I actually had a friend who was there when this supposedly happened about the giants of Kandahar. But I'll save that for another episode. Right now, I'm just saying that there's a lot of um, stories and evidence, even that giants existed. So if that is the case, then why would it be so hard to believe that something very small also existed or exists? But really, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. But I want to talk about right now um, this tribe, the Eskani tribe in Nova Scotia, which is up in Canada. Um, the Esconsi tribe was known to, or they have their legends about the little people. The little people to them were known to take children. Okay, they lived in caves in a certain mountain range, and they had been there for centuries. And the the townsfolk, which is a very small village, they would warn their children, and from what I understand, they still do to this day, currently warn their children to stay away from this certain hill, this particular place where the little people live and have forever, because they fear that the children will be taken away by them. And that's another thing that is really crazy. Okay, all of these cultures have stories about the little people taking people, abducting people, especially children. And that's one thing that really trips me out about this, because it's not just like one or two cultures that talk about that. There are a lot that talk about that. And even the one that I talked about in the episode when I was exploring causes of missing 411, which really kind of turned into a little people episode of its own. But um, that's just because there's so much evidence. Well, I don't want to say evidence because that's a more definitive term. Um, there's so much lore about them taking people. So many stories about them abducting people, especially children. And it's in so many cultures. And that's what I was going to say about that episode was I was talking about the little people in Indonesia, down in Sulawesi, that live in the jungle. And the people around there, the indigenous people, the tribes, they have actually shaped their culture around this belief. Like they literally wear certain color clothes. They don't wear bright colors whatsoever. And especially to go out in the jungle, they dress in like all black because it said that that lowers your chance of getting taken by them. And so, I mean, everybody in the village will wear nothing but black. Some of the villages wear well, yeah, some of the villages, different ones. Some of them wear nothing but black, but some of them also will wear like a little bit of white with their clothes. But black and white are like the only colors that they will wear at all. And they especially stay away from colors like yellow and bright, I guess, bright colors, real bright ones. But there's something about it. They say, if you wear that kind of stuff, you're very likely to get abducted and taken in the jungle. And there was that account of the guy that, well, his name was Alan Lammers, and you guys can look up the interview. I'll actually link it in the description if any of you want to check it out, because it's really interesting and I found it very informative. And it's really the only actual witness type thing, as close to a witness encounter as I've ever seen, as I've ever heard from anybody. And you can tell the way the guy is talking that this happened. This really happened. He saw this. And it's very interesting, though, what happened. But I won't get into it because it'll probably take up too much time to tell you guys about it again. However, I did talk about it in a previous episode. But the thing about it is they're all said to take people. They they're and this culture specifically, I mean, has like resigned themselves to it. They accept that it's a part of life that you might get abducted by the little people in the jungle if you don't do this and this, I guess. But I mean, they just know, they're kind of nonchalant about it. Like, it's just something that happens. It's just part of it, part of being here. Yeah. And they still believe this stuff. I mean, this is not some kind of old back in the day kind of belief. This is like current. They are actually still doing this because this apparently still happens, according to them. Now, we talked about, the up in Canada and Nova Scotia. So they're reported to be up there. They're also in like Hawaii. Okay. You go out of the continental US over to Hawaii, the islands, and you have the Menehune. The Menehune are a race of small people, little people, who are said to be the original inhabitants of the islands. Like they were there prior to the Polynesians arriving. So they're said to still be there, living in the jungles and the mountains, forests out there on the island. There's the Menehune fish pond that they supposedly built, which is like a sacred place to the Hawaiians. And there's also the what's it called? The Kakialoa ditch, which is out in Waimea. So it's interesting that they actually have landmarks that they attribute to, or say that they built. It's, I mean, that's how serious they are about this stuff. I remember watching an episode of Finding Bigfoot, of all things, and it was interesting because they were out there in Hawaii talking about and looking for the Menehune, and the there was a picture that someone had of their wedding. I think it was them on their wedding day, and there was this looked like a little person in the picture that showed up, like peeking around a tree. And it was really, really weird. I can't remember what the deal was with all that, but of course they, I think, were like debunking it and stuff, trying to keep it under wraps. And it's interesting because, that was really around the time I'd first started hearing people talk about the little people. So I thought that was actually kind of coincidental how they did that show on it. They, kind of because there's really no Sasquatch reports in Hawaii that I know of. I'm not saying they're not there, but I don't know. There's no one reports seeing them in Hawaii, really. It doesn't seem like. But it's interesting though, because the little people uh, are like part of their history. It's part of their culture, the Minihuni. And they went and made this show, and it seemed like they kind of did it right at the time I was hearing about the little people from a lot of researchers and stuff, where I started hearing them talk about it. So it kind of made me wonder why the timing was so coincidental. Coincidental. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it was an informative show, really. Actually, one of their better ones, I would say. They still tried to make it look like a joke and seem like there was, nothing to it, and it was just crazy stories from people. But there were a lot of people that said to have seen them, and they talked about all these places, that they supposedly made and stuff. So I don't know. It's a part of their culture, though, as it is with many others. Now, come back over to the continental US, to the mainland, and we've got just a plethora of Indian tribes that have legends and lore about the little people. They all have like names for them, and they all have very similar characteristics and behaviors. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Shoshone tribe. Okay, they call them the Namirigar. And the reason I'm talking about them is because the little mummy was supposedly one of the Namirigar. And they said, this is like a race of very small people that lived in the Rocky Mountains, and especially in the Pedro mountain range. Also thought to live near the Wind River. And they're said to be very protective of their homes and their areas. And they will defend them with poisoned arrows that they shoot out of like little bows. Like they make bows and arrows, and they will shoot people, I guess, who come up on their land. Whether they mean to or not, I don't think it really matters. I think that's what it kind of seemed like. They would shoot anybody, really, whether you meant to stumble across them or not. But I thought that was really crazy, because it seems like a lot of these tribes think that or report that they're extremely territorial, certain ones. But the Namirigar are one of them that are feared by this tribe. I mean, there are other tribes that, fear the little people, but this is definitely one of them. And they say the mummy, of course, was one of these, because it was found in the San Pedro Mountains in a cave. And they say that they lived in caves in the mountains, just like everybody else says, pretty much. Now, you've got the Choctaw, okay? The Choctaw called them the Kawanakasha. And you'll have to forgive me for my pronunciations, because I'm sure they're less than accurate, but I do the best I can. Anyway, they were generally afraid of them too, though. They say that they were about 1 to 2 feet tall, and they say they would carry away little boys to test their spirit. They would take them to the cave, and they would have like 3 wise men come from the village to wait on the boy, I guess. And the little people would place like a knife and a bag of poisonous herbs and a bag of healing herbs in front of the little boy. And depending on what he chose, that was supposed to be indicative of what kind of person he was going to be in life, I guess. Like, for instance, if he were to choose the knife, then that meant he was going to be a killer. And if he chose the poisonous herbs, then it meant he would provide bad medicine for his people. And if he chose the healing herbs, that meant he was going to be a powerful medicine man. So that's interesting right there, that they actually record that they would kind of help determine what kind of person they would be in the tribe, like almost like they were treated as a higher spiritual being or something. You know what I mean? And they still to this day leave offerings for them. Like if they ever pass through the Pedro Mountains, they still leave them stuff like I can't remember what exactly. I know tobacco, I think, is one thing they leave them, and they just always leave them an offering out of respect. And that's not the only tribe that does that. But and of course they live in caves. They report them to they all the things say they live in caves. Um, the Crow are another one that have a long history with the little people. They call them the Nirumbi. Okay. They live in the Pryor Mountains. And there's a legend that says they gave this prominent Crow chief, Plenty Coops was his name. Plenty Coops, something like that. They gave him visions that kept the tribe safe and together in times of peril, I guess. But it's said that the little people were the ones who gave the chief the visions that helped his people so much. And they will still leave offerings anytime that they go to the Prior Gap. And they do that in remembrance of the help that was given to them from the little people. And see, that's what's interesting also. In these different places, they seem to have different temperaments or, personalities or something. Like, for instance, the ones I was talking about before, in Nova Scotia that are feared, completely feared by the natives. Then you've got the ones here who were actually, I don't guess they were feared, but they were actually helpers to the tribe. Like, it's really wild. I mean, seriously, when you look at this and see all this different stuff, it's interesting how it's all relative, you know. But there's a lot of stories by the Crow natives who that the little people have helped them in times of need and stuff. Lots of stories about that, and mostly they were feared though because they were unpredictable and very mysterious beings. So I guess it was kind of like a good relationship with the tribe, but they were also weary of them, leery of them, something like that. So I don't know. Apprehensive to get too involved with them, I guess. I don't know. But and in the majority of all these legends, they look and act very similar. Now, we get on to the Cherokees. Okay. The Cherokees have a lot of stories and history about the little people. They called them the Yunwe Sundai. Okay. That was the name for them. The Cherokee had three types of little people. They had the Laurels, which were like They weren't bad. They were like um, a good type of them, but they were mildly malicious. I mean, not malicious, mischievous. They would like play tricks and pranks and stuff like that. Then they had the rock people. The rock people were the ones who were bad. They were the malicious ones, the ones that would um, abduct people and steal children from the tribe and cause like chaos and wreak havoc when people would invade their space and stuff like that. Um, that it was really weird because it seems like they're all very territorial. Like all these stories indicate that they're very, very territorial. So I don't know, but the laurels, I mean the dogwoods, the dogwood people are the other type. That's the third kind. And the dogwood people seem to be the best out of all of them, like as far as their um, temperaments and stuff go. The dogwood people are said to be the helpers, the ones that would provide a lot of assistance to the tribe, and they would help them in times of great need, and they just enjoyed helping the people when they could. So they seem like probably the best ones, but each one of these tribes seems to represent a part of um, humanity almost, like they were there to keep them in check, kind of. It's weird. There's some legends that some stories that go along with that too. But you know, the Cherokee believed that they did not require food or sleep, and that they were pretty much immortal. Uh, that's what it seems like, anyway. They said, but they seem like a very um, well, I don't want to say godlike being, but like in their terms of what gods are or something, not dying and having all these powers and stuff. It just seems like they kind of revered them that way. I don't know. Anyway, they believed though that they were immortal, and that is really interesting because I think that's like the only place or the only ones that I had actually heard that belief come from. And it's weird though because none of the other ones really talk about their lifespan, and it makes me think that Cherokee actually had a whole lot more knowledge about them than most of the other ones. And given the amount of material that I'd found when I researched all this about the Cherokees, or that the Cherokees were able to provide, it surpassed all the other ones. I mean, there was so much more, and it was a vast wealth of knowledge that they had, it seems like. And a lot of this stuff came from stories that the people from the tribe actually told. So there's something about that too, I think. But anyway, the Smokies, the Smoky Mountains, where the Cherokees were, have a lot of tales about the little people being up there, and I thought that was also strange that that's where the email came from, in the Smokies. But anyhow, they up there in the Smokies, they're known to be in places like Cades Cove and Clingman's Dome and like Mount LeConte and just like Fontana Lake, places like that are just not very um, developed at all. They're still pretty much barren wilderness, and it seems like that's where they stay, way out in the woods, way away from people. And it's said that they will emerge like once a generation to a handful of people to show them that they're still there and keep their legend alive or something. They'll let people see them for so long, and then when they're satisfied that they're still remembered, they will go back into hiding, I guess, something like that. But that's one of the legends up in the Smokies. Another one that's interesting to me. This is something that they're said to do. Um, they believed that they they would lead lost children in the mountains back to their families. Like if a child went missing and they couldn't be found, the Cherokee would call on the little people to help them guide them back home. And it's weird because sometimes they would, they're said they would lead the children even deeper into their world, the world of the little people, I guess. And they would actually become like them, become one of them, and they would be happy forever, like living still alive now and as happy as they could be and laughing and playing forever. And they said a lot of these little people, I guess the better ones, are like that. They enjoy life. They love to be here, and it seems like they were here before anyone else too. The Cherokee, when they came down from the Great Lakes region, they it's said that when they came down to the Smokies, like to the Appalachians, when they got there, they found like neatly tended gardens, like very well kept. And they had no clue what would have been, because nobody was there, you know. They had no idea how these gardens were there and were kept up and stuff. And then eventually, the longer they were here, they would see the little people come and tend to the gardens and gather food and stuff, and then go back, I guess, underground or wherever it was that they were. So that it's said that they were here long before even the Cherokee first got here in the Appalachians. So I thought that was really neat. And I think that was when they like came down to North Carolina or one of the Carolinas. But it's really interesting though that a lot of these cultures say that they were here prior to the humans coming to wherever it was that they went. And it's almost like they were the original people, the actual original people here. Anyway, there's another interesting legend, though, that I wanted to share, and it's the tobacco legend of Hickory Nut Gorge. Okay, it's said that, all right, these Native Americans, the Cherokees, were very fond of a certain type of tobacco, like Katana rustica or something like that, which is different from the tobacco that is in cigarettes and stuff these days. But it was a real rich tobacco that they were just in love with. They just had to have it. And it was introduced to them. I don't even remember that part, but they were like, they really loved this. And the thing was, they had to pass through the Hickory Nut Gorge in order to get to where the tobacco supply was. Um, the Hickory Nut Gorge was guarded by little people, and they would not ever let them through. Like they would do everything they could to keep the Cherokee from passing through and going to wherever it was they needed to go. Well, it was said that a warrior, a young warrior, very, very skilled and tough and whatever, went to go retrieve some of the tobacco. And he said he was going to kill the little people that were guarding the place or something. Well, it's said that the little people killed him and threw his bones into a creek bed. And so then, after that warrior did not return, a magician said that he would go and told the chief to give him a chance to outsmart them or whatever and retrieve some tobacco. So the magician at first, he turned into a mole and started to tunnel his way underneath the pass where the little people were guarding it. And they ended up finding his tunnels and cutting him off, not allowing him to go any further. So the magician went back to the tribe empty handed and requested another chance. So he was granted another chance, and this time he went as a hummingbird. Well, he passed by unsuspected because he was so small. The hummingbird was so small to them, even. But he was only able to retrieve a tiny bit of the tobacco. And the tobacco that he brought, he gave to the chief and said to give him one more chance because he really thought that he knew how he could get past them. So this time he decided to turn into a whirlwind, I guess a tornado kind of thing, cyclone. And he tore through the gorge. And I want to say killed the little people or threw them off somewhere, something like that. I can't remember the exact wording. But he like scattered them, and they never returned to the gorge after that. And it's said that the gorge, the way it's shaped right now through this little pass, is there's like a road. I mean, not a road, but it's like cut through on the mountains, and something else that looks like a tornado went through there or something. And it said that that's why it's like that to this day. Well, this magician tore through there, scattering the little people. Once they were gone, he resurrected the warrior that they killed. And he and the warrior went to retrieve tobacco, and they brought back a payload of it to the chief. And to this day, the little people don't guard that pass anymore, and that's how they were able to do their tobacco thing. So that's one of the other stories that I read about it and I thought was very interesting because there's so much lore, so many tales that have been passed down about these little people. And I mean, there's multitudes of them. If you go researching it, you will find multitudes of stories about them. So, I don't know, man. It's just interesting how I've found these little hut looking things that don't look like anything else could fit in there except something that's about a foot tall. And there's clear evidence that something had been in these. Okay, the tunnels that I've found, and they're not like tunnels like underground tunnels and stuff like that, or going through a mountain kind of tunnel, but it was like tunneled through foliage, like dense foliage and forest, and it's just about like that tall. I've got it on video somewhere on my other channel, my Frosted Forest Sasquatch channel. I recorded the way it was, like this arched little archway through there. I mean, it's just crazy some of the stuff you find when you get out there and look at this stuff. But I don't know what else could be utilizing things that small. Um, it's just weird. All of this is just weird. The way that it coincides with missing people, with rocks and caves, with things like they have powers and, can cause someone to be confused enough to where they will roam around the forest forever aimlessly. Like, it's weird. Like it said, they have that power too. The Cherokee say that. But the rock people, the Laurels and the Dogwoods, the Laurel people are the mischievous, the friendly mischievous ones, the ones that'll play pranks on you. And it's said that they are there to keep us young at heart, I think is their purpose, to keep us young at heart and show us that not to take life too seriously. The Dogwoods, their purpose is to keep us remember to help us remember to always give without expecting things in return, to always help without expecting a reward. And the rock people, they're here to remind us, I guess, to leave them alone. I don't know. I can't remember what they equated that to, but there's some kind of life lesson that goes along with that. But I don't think that it was made up. I just don't, because there's too many cultures that have talked about this, documented this, and believe this. And to this day, still believe this. We don't believe it because, we're taught not to believe this kind of stuff. From an early age, we're told not to believe this sort of thing because it's all made up. It's not within the bounds of reality. When in fact, it has been more of a reality to more people before than it ever was with any of us. So I don't know why I mean, I do know, but they keep things so suppressed with, I don't know, I look at us as like the modern people, they keep us so suppressed and held back from our spiritual selves and our true selves and the true purpose of why we're here and the way things really are is all held back. It's all, we're always told it's not real. So that's what has shaped us to believe that these kind of things don't exist. I mean, it's just been that way. And it'll probably continue to be that way until people decide that, enough people have learned that it's not the way that they tell you. But I'm not going to get into that, really. I think I've probably talked long enough about the little people legends of the natives, but they're not the only ones. I mean, you've got this stuff in Europe, you've got it everywhere, like literally everywhere. South Africa, they've even found bones, I think, in South Africa, small skeletons and stuff. I mean, there's video footage, like, oh, there's that crazy video where that dude's riding a motorcycle through, and there's like a little person that runs out and like knocks him off the bike or something. It's really wild. I don't know if it's real or not, but I don't know. I hope it is because it's really neat. It's really cool, but I don't know. I can't say. Now, there's that kind of thing, though. I mean, in other countries that people still, and this looked like a little jungle dude, like from a jungle tribe with a spear and stuff, like running and, I mean, flying, just hauling ass in front of this motorcycle. It was crazy. But they're in every culture, you know. That's what is so crazy about this. It's almost like the Sasquatch, how they're in all cultures and aliens and stuff. It's the same thing with them. They're recorded in the history of the indigenous people. And that's the way it is with it. So, I mean, you can believe what you want. I'm just here to open up the possibilities that other things do exist. And that's basically why I talk about this stuff. Because I know for a fact that things I was told weren't real are. And that makes you wonder what else you've been lied to about or told not to believe. Not necessarily lied to, but you know what I mean. Anyway, guys, I guess that's about all I'm going to say about it right now. But I could actually go into even more, like with the fairies and stuff like that. Like there's other stories that I've read about them. And it's all, a lot of it has to have some kind of magical thing. There was one explorer, a long time ago, that ran across a whole bunch of little people. He and his crew, like, stopped for the night wherever they were exploring or something. I want to say it was here in America, in North America, but they stopped and met some little people, and they um, ended up like partying with them, kind of like hanging out with them. They were very welcoming, and the captain and the leader of the village or whatever, the little people, they like talked all night long or something, and the crew drank with the other men and whatever. And the captain, this explorer, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of these famous ones, um, ended up like looking at his crew and seeing these guys, and they were all little like them, like the stuff they had been drinking, and it was like this wine that the little people made themselves or something. And he got flipped out, and he said the leader of the village they were at told him that the wine was magic, and that he would the men would turn back once it wore off. And he said that he flipped out and they left, I guess, or something. And he said the next day the men um, were back to normal, and he went back to the place where the little people were, and nothing was there, like nothing had ever happened. So there's so many stories that include them, and they're not what you would think, not likely stories, like this exploration thing. I mean, it's almost like it goes into a different realm of possibility once you start hearing about that stuff. I don't know, guys. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and sticking with me. And I will be back with you guys really soon. And if you have anything that you want me to share on the show, feel free to send it to me. Anything I'm talking about: ghosts, goblins, little people, Sasquatch, dogmen, whatever you got, aliens, UFO encounters, whatever. If you guys want me to share it, I'll be glad to. I'll be glad to share it, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable. It has to be pretty interesting, though. I don't want, just a bunch of crap. But anyway, email it to paranormalrushhour@gmail.com, and I'll get it and I'll read it. It might take me a few days, but I'll read it eventually. But anyway, I appreciate it, guys. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And I'll be back with you very soon on another, hopefully, interesting topic. So until then, be well, everybody, and I will catch you guys later.